What is this?
Hold on to your hats and glasses, everybody. It's time for This Week in Mormons. We are going to talk about wacky, wild, good times this week on this Mormon podcast. And
it sounds like the best show we've ever had, Jeff.
Doesn't it?
Wacky, wild, and fun?
I don't know what... Sorry. Serious and turgid. Maybe it would be a word.
The thought-provoking issues.
Maybe. There's not... I admit I don't feel like I've been as provoked this week as other weeks on a personal level. But I think we might make it work. I think we'll be okay.
So, of course, this is Jeff. I'm Al.
Hi.
And we are joined this week by a very special guest, everybody. My good friend, Susan Hepworth. I guess you're Susan now that you're a grown-up.
Yes,
sorry.
I'm a grown woman now. You can call me Susan.
You were Susie for so long, and that worked so well.
Yes, and I just have to say it's going to be the best show you've had because I am the guest. So.
That's right. Well, I mean, that's fair.
That is panache right there. That is sass. Apparently, you have not...
You want to know what Moxie is? That's Moxie.
We did once have the most interesting Mormon in the world on the show, so we'll have to see if that... remember that, Al? That was a good... That was
Adam, right?
The guy who did those YouTube videos. That was funny. But
he was very
I
nice.
trust that Susan, with her political acumen, will, in fact, rise above any previous guests on this show. Until the next time we have a guest. In which case...
Yeah, so by way of introduction, Susan worked on the on Governor Romney campaign for both shots at the presidency, didn't you?
Yep, 08 and in 12.
And now you are down in Florida. You were recently working with the GOP down there and Governor Scott.
Yep, that's right. I live in beautiful Tallahassee, which I actually love. It's up in the Panhandle. It's a little bit southern, a little bit country.
Is
a little
beautiful?
Bit red,
Are you using,
a little bit redneck?
Are you using beautiful
as
a euphemism for Tallahassee? Because
I love it.
My understanding is most Floridians regard it as a backwater of sorts. So I have not had the pleasure of going.
It can be a little little backwoods, but it's actually very beautiful. I mean, people here call it LA for Lower Alabama. I mean, it's like 20 minutes from the border of Georgia. I love it. I love it a lot.
Well, the pictures on Instagram have convinced me that it's a fine part of Florida, where
Exactly.
I may have judged it before, but the beach looks just as good as any beach I've seen.
Exactly. Actually,
go ahead.
No, the Panhandle beaches in Florida are the most beautiful in the entire country. People don't know that. I mean, people make fun of it. Oh, it's the redneck Riviera. They are absolutely the most beautiful beaches in the country.
I would never say that. Panama City is in Florida, that delightful place. Pensacola, who would ever make fun of these places? Spring break party land. Am I right?
You gotta go. White sand beaches, turquoise water. It's beautiful.
Well, it's kind of great though, because you are a fellow Midwesterner, as I am, from Kansas, and you maneuvered your way out to D.C. for a while, and then just landed in Florida, and you found your new home. You're happy there.
I do. I love Florida. People always say, "Where do you want to make your home?" And I say, definitely in Florida.
I say Hamilton, Missouri.
Hamilton might be a little small for me.
She understands.
Small potatoes.
She understands. But now, when you say Florida, though, I mean, my understanding, of course, Tallahassee, the Panhandle is quite culturally distinct from the rest of Florida. Would you want to live down in the lower lands of Florida, down the I-4 corridor and all that stuff, or do you really want to stick to northern Florida?
I love North Florida. No, I have no desire to live in Miami or anywhere south of Orlando, unless I'm living on Palm Beach Island, which is fairly exclusive. I doubt I'll ever live there. But I do prefer the north part of Florida. It's just very, I mean, most people when they think of Florida, they think of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa. Some people like to call it Trampa.
Some people.
I personally love North Florida. And most people don't know until you come down here that a majority of the state is really rural. I mean, it's very, everybody drives a truck. Everybody listens to country music.
Yeah. Dirk Hicks, read it.
Just
that sounds
everybody
awful.
thinks of Miami,
you're not
but I love it.
State at this point.
I love it, and the
like
weather is awesome. We have no personal income tax. It's great.
So you probably also
that
have
does
no
sound nice.
social
That sounds
programs.
nice.
That sounds good. Now, full disclosure, I look forward to our exciting chats today. I'm not the greatest Mitt Romney fan that's ever lived. I think he's a stand-up guy.
And I am, so it evens out.
I think he's a fine individual. I don't dislike Mitt Romney. I would just say I've never been bowled over by Mitt Romney. So I look forward to getting to know things a little bit better. Because
Jeff can be our
documentary
villain.
didn't really teach me anything, if we're being honest.
I thought the documentary was great.
It was entertaining, but there's nothing I didn't already know there. I mean, come on, people.
Jeff, it portrayed him as a human being as opposed to what the campaign trail portrayed him as.
Right.
As a monster,
robot.
a robot.
Now, before we dive into all that, what did you just get done doing with Governor Scott and the GOP and stuff? What was your role with that stuff?
Yep, I moved down here, in May of 2013, and I became the communications director at the Republican Party of Florida. That essentially was also the governor's campaign, so I was a spokesperson for the governor, worked hand in hand with his campaign. We won a super, super tough fight down here against a former Republican governor turned Democrat.
Charlie Crist!
That's how they get you.
Yeah,
that is
Charlie
how they get you.
Crist. So that was a super sweet victory for sure, because that guy's a snake.
Why?
So
Why is
yeah, it
Charlie
was
Crist a
awesome.
snake? Let us speak to me about Charlie Crist's serpentine nature, please.
Well, let me just tell you first off, my entire job pretty much was to just spew venom daily about Charlie Crist. That's pretty much what I got paid to do, which is awesome in a way. And then I think about it and I'm like, that's really not what I should be doing with my life, right? Like, I should be a lot nicer. But that's what they pay me to do. So it was just constant attacks every single day on Charlie. I mean, attacks from his past when he was governor, when he was not governor, things he was saying currently on the campaign trail. You just have to seize every opportunity. You have to fight every single day. Claw
This is
your
just
way
like
to
the West
victory.
Wing. It is just like the West Wing.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So
like
it sounds like what you're saying is you and former Governor Crist need to maybe get together, mend some fences, heal some wounds, find common ground. You know?
Yeah, I've met him a few times.
Build
Nice
relationships
enough
of
guy,
trust.
but
I
no,
like,
no
you
desire
just
for that.
described him as a snake.
But he's a nice guy.
He's a pleasant fellow.
He's a pleasant fellow. He just doesn't have any core values or beliefs, you could say.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair.
Couldn't we have said that about Mitt, though, too, guys? I mean, as long as we're spinning.
Oh, come
things-
on.
Whoa, boo, Jeff.
Whoa.
Why is
What's
that boo? I don't think that's boo. I think you could say about almost any.
Wait,
politician.
you're suggesting that Mitt didn't have any core values? I think that was kind of the problem that he ran into, is he had core values. Well, because I'm not a huge Mitt fanboy, but I respected his the campaign could have been managed a little bit differently, but like he was him. He was just doing Mitt, and the country. As far from my perspective, the country couldn't wrap their heads around the squeaky clean image of Mitt Romney.
Yeah, that's why he lost. The country couldn't wrap their minds around the squeaky clean.
Like
image
honestly,
of
I mean,
Mitt.
every argument against it was that he was robot-esque. His hair was too perfect. Perfect family. He doesn't get normal people like us. He's too rich, too successful, too fancy.
Okay. Sure.
What do you like? What do you think was like? Why didn't people love him? Why didn't America love him?
I mean, I think there were still misunderstandings about his faith, but I think they did a lot to combat that, and that's good. I believe that Governor Romney didn't always perfectly articulate his positions on issues and seemed to be an opportunist. And even if he's not, I mean, this is just how the perceptions that were out there of him. And I don't know if it was the robot thing was one thing. I don't think people had a problem with him being, kind of the dorky Mormon guy that he might be. I mean, we're used to that, I think, in Mormon culture. But I think there was a disconnect, and I think it came at a really bad time with people seeing him as somewhat of an elitist. He didn't act like an elitist, but a guy who just doesn't understand what it meant to be.
That's what I'm
everyday
saying.
American.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, but I don't think that
what
means
was-
they don't understand that he doesn't have core values, or they think he's too Ozzy and Harriet for America. I just think he didn't line up with what the electorate was seeking in that cycle.
Susie, I'm curious from your perspective. What was some of the sentiment on why didn't America love Mitt Romney?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question? If we had known the answer, we probably would have won. I actually think, and it's something people don't talk about a lot either, is that, the Obama campaign was really, really good. They were sharp, they were on it, they did their research, and they pounded us every single day. They pounded us early on. They knew even before the race got started that this was going to be the nominee. They knew it was, sort of inevitable that Mitt was going to be the guy, so why waste your time on any other of the candidates? And so they got started really early. And, people always say, oh, that negative campaigning, it doesn't work, and oh, those pieces of mail that I get in the mail don't work. But the truth is they do. They're very effective. That's why we use them, and we use them on our side as well. But they got in there pretty early and launched some good attacks that really stuck. And all of those little things add up in the end. I can't, for sure say it was one thing, that made us lose. But look, he ran a super tough race. We were going against an incumbent president who had no primary. We had a pretty brutal and ugly primary that lasted all the way to, I think, May. Oh gosh, it was the middle of May before we had the nomination wrapped up. That was pretty late in the game.
That's all Rick Santorum's fault, that jerk.
Well, there was a lot of people who had their
Susan,
one
will
week
you
in
say
the
on the air
spotlight.
that Rick Santorum is a jerk? Please say that.
I'm not the biggest fan of Rick Santorum.
But the exact verbiage I'm looking for is Rick Santorum is a jerk. Please utter those words.
I can't.
You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with.
I'm a comms person, okay? Like, I stick to talking points. I know I know what works and what doesn't. So, do I think he would make a good president? No, I don't.
What about a good human? That's the bigger question.
Was there anything in the Romney campaign sort of chitter chatter that was the squeaky clean image? Was that a thing, or am I off base with that? Or do you feel like Americans couldn't connect with him because he was too aloof?
Well, aloof and clean aren't the same thing, Al.
Yeah, I think
Jeff, I
that
really
they did
wish
view
you'd
him as
shut
probably,
your face.
and that was evident. I think in some of the exit polls on election day, it was that everybody totally agreed he would be the best president, but 90-10, Obama won. Do you think this person cares about me? So that there obviously was a disconnect there with voters, and that they didn't think that he understood the average problem. But obviously, you and I know, as fellow Mormons, that he obviously does have a really keen understanding of everyday issues. And that's actually something that he talked about a couple of weeks ago in a speech before he decided that he wasn't going to run. Was just sort of playing up a little bit more of his church service and how he has spent hours upon hours, years counseling people who are going through, mental stress, emotional stress, addictions of all different kinds.
Like as a
financial
stake president?
problems, as bishop, stake president, whatever it is. He very much is in tune with those issues. But unfortunately, that was just not something that voters were able to connect with in 2012, and that was, probably one of the reasons that we didn't win.
Now, I have a genuine question, because I think about, the Mormon issue. When we talk about the Mormon Moment, we've talked about a lot of that stuff on this show for a long time. And here's something that's puzzled me. And I feel like within Mormonism...
Yes.
I feel like within Mormonism there's this tendency to perhaps, I don't want to say overly support Mitt Romney. I'm not sure the best way to articulate this. I feel like within our own faith, people were very, 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 very gaga over Mitt.
We were excited.
Over Mitt Romney.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the thing, and I understand it. Whether or not you would, I could even be on the far left, and I could totally understand the tantalizing prospect of still saying, hey, that's one of us, and actually having one in the White House would be cool, even if I take out all political views or whatever, right? But I've often felt that Latter-day Saints are sort of, how would I say? I don't want to, not fanatically, but over the top in love with Mitt Romney. And I always ask myself, if we took out the Mormon out of the equation and he was just the Republican running with the platform that he has, would people truly be, would LDS people be as wildly just in love with Mitt Romney as they are? Because I really think so much of it plays into the fact that he is a guy who shares the values politically, but that he was a Mormon. Because if he wasn't a Mormon, he's just the next business Republican who's running. And I don't think everyone's running in the streets shouting praises for all the other business-centric Republicans that have run before, These are
Oh
smart.
yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that that's the case for some people. And it's funny, I was thinking today of some of the funny things that happened on the campaign trail. You know, we would be on a rope line. So what I did with Governor Romney was I traveled full-time as part of just sort of like the core traveling team with him. So I was in charge of wrangling the press corps. We carried about 45 of them with us on our airplane every day.
Did you ever meet McKay Coppins?
Oh yeah, I know McKay well. I like
Okay,
McKay.
good.
Yeah, I saw McKay all the time. Yeah.
We need to get McKay on the show, so put in a good word. We've been trying for years.
I will.
Well, we hated McKay for so long because he was such a crappy journalist when he was at like LDS Living magazine.
Anyway,
and
he's big time now.
yeah, I know. We get sidetracked. Our love-hate with McKay goes back years. Anyway, please continue. I'm sorry.
So we would be at all these events, and the governor would be like working the rope line or, shaking hands with supporters. And, you'd get the people up on the rope line who were members of the church, and they would sort of give him a wink and lean in and say, like, hey, Brother Romney. Or if Ann was there, like, hey, Sister Romney. And I kind of thought, oh, you people, just like, come on, like, don't say that at an event like this. Like, he's just a normal guy. You don't have to throw out the brother or the sister thing.
He's
They're
all
probably
the
expecting
time.
some kind of special kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge treatment. Like, hey,
Yeah.
Governor Romney, I'm in the club. Maybe we can be at the diner and you can ask me questions so I get on the TV.
Well, I wonder what it would have been cool if he like had Skittles for everybody that was also a Mormon. It was like, oh, you're one of us? Good. Have some of these.
Or a scarlet letter. That could be fun too.
Or a scarlet letter.
That could have been fun.
Like, what do you do with that? That's funny.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, the church and all those volunteers provided a good base of people. In a lot of those early primary states, you got to get volunteers if you're going to win elections.
Al, didn't you?
They were
canvass-
eager to do that.
Al, didn't you canvass in Iowa in 2008?
I did in 2008. Yeah, I went up there during Christmas break to
Al was
answer
there.
phones.
Al was there on caucus night. I have a photo of us together on
Yes,
caucus night.
and I put in signs in people's front lawns in the
Mm-hmm.
snow, which is very tough to do in Iowa in the winter.
Yes, the ground is rock solid.
Those are very weak stakes. You can't pound those in that thing. Well, my thing in 2008 is I just really wanted to see what that process looked like up there because Iowa's a beast unto itself, right?
Oh, it's amazing.
So-
I mean, it's the best place for politics in the world. There's nothing like Iowa.
And I got quoted in the Boston Globe as saying Mike Huckabee is the biggest blunder in American politics this year.
I hope.
I was very proud.
I
of
hope
that
he
quote.
comes
Wow.
back. I can't wait till 2016. I love it when there's no incumbent because it's just so much more exciting on both sides.
Wait, so,
That's
so Susan, why are you surprised at Mitt saying no? Because it seemed like indicators were pointing to he was slow playing us. He was like, no, but really, if you're in the circle, probably yes.
Well, that's a good question. It seemed like he was all about it. When he made that announcement to those donors, I think that was, a month ago on Friday that happened, maybe?
sure. Yeah, about that.
I was in Orlando for a work meeting when that happened, and I was pretty, surprised. I wasn't expecting him to say that because I just thought when push came to shove, he wasn't going to do it. But, there he went and said he was really serious about it. So, I had made a couple of phone calls and started talking to some people, and they said, oh, no, he is definitely considering it. I mean, this was not like a pump fake or anything like that. I mean, he's seriously considering it. So I got to be honest, I went back and forth, but I definitely thought that there was probably like an 80% chance he was going to do it. But then when I got the email saying, hey, join this conference call on a Friday to talk about his intentions, well, then I knew right away he wasn't going to do it because who's going to say you're running for president on a conference call on a Friday morning? I mean, that's not a good idea. So, but I don't know. I had mixed feelings about it. I think he would have made an amazing president. I want him to be president, but running for president is so difficult, and people just don't understand that unless you can see it up close. And it's even totally different for staff than it is for the candidate. I mean, for us, it is a job. For the candidate, that is their life. And I think it took some real courage and probably, just a lot of humility for him to really step aside when all the numbers were saying, go for it. The people were saying, go for it. He definitely had the ability to win the nomination. It wasn't a sure thing, but it definitely was possible. So I think it took a lot for him to step aside and, put any personal ambition aside, because he really did want to do what was best for country and not for himself.
Well, then why step aside if the numbers were there and the ambition was there?
It wasn't a guaranteed thing, and I think he wanted to give other people, as he said, a younger generation of leaders, people who haven't had the chance to articulate their message across the country. He wanted to step aside and give them the opportunity to do it. He had the opportunity, twice before, once as the nominee, and I just think that he realized it was better for the country for someone else to take that mantle than him.
Sure.
And a lot of people, I'm telling you, you've got some of these, candidates who come out here every time, like Santorum and Huckabee and, Ron Paul has run so many times. Like, they just run to run.
The
That's
Ron Paul
not
revolution is what that is.
Yeah, the
That
Ron
is
Paul
real.
revolution.
That is real.
Yes.
Do you think is there anything, like, is America ready for a Mormon president? Is there any element of,
Sure. I don't buy into, I'm sure there's some people who would probably have a problem with it, but there's some people who are going to have a problem with a Catholic president or a Jewish president. It just doesn't matter. I would have to believe that in this country we're past that point. Like, we do not have a religious litmus test in this country, nor should we. So I'm just going to assume that there is no issue with having a Mormon president.
Like, when you guys were hustling the campaign, was that the number one issue for you guys, or was that sort of a byproduct?
No, not at all.
But how
No.
much was it sort of lingering? I'm sure it was discussed. I'm sure that the idea of perceptions because of all the stereotypes surrounding Mormonism, most of which are false, but because of those perceptions people would have from being uninformed, which is no fault of their own. I'm sure, though, that was that always just kind of lingering, though, in the background, and shaping some of the decisions to try to make sure he was palatable to.
I think it
broader audience?
depended on what part of the country you were in. There's some parts of the country where that's going to be a bigger issue
Utah.
than other parts. Oh yeah, major issue there. Boy, those people are going to have a real problem.
I actually just recently had an anti-Mormon letter to the editor published in our local paper in Missouri.
Oh, really?
Dude, I was shocked. I was like, is this a real thing? Is this still a thing, people?
About what? What was the premise?
Well, it was about my business that I run back there, and how the intent was that we were coming to take back Zion and all that.
Well,
and I'm just like,
One quilt at a time.
Yeah, that's right. One stitch at a time, bringing Jesus back. I know how he wants to be ushered in. You think red robes, I think red quilts. Wrapped around.
Now, but working on building on this, though. So since you were on the inside, Susan, how do you feel about the whole Mormon Moment concept? Most people seem to regard it as sort of really kicking into gear with the Romney candidacy, and then we feel that it kind of closed out after the 2012 election slid away. Do you agree with that, or what have you seen yourself regarding the so-called Mormon Moment and awareness, and what role the Romney campaign did or did not play in it?
Yeah, I don't want to say that. I guess I don't want to define any sort of specific moment, but I absolutely think that it was a great thing for the LDS Church, for people to learn as much as they did about Mitt. I can tell you just from my experience, when I was on the campaign, I was in what you would probably describe as a bubble, because I was, traveling full-time every single day. I wasn't watching any TV until I got to my hotel at night. I was reading news clips, but I was a little bit unplugged just because of our circumstance of being in an airplane, then we're on a bus, and then we're at a rally, and then we're back on an airplane over and over and over 4 times a day. But I can just say, from a lot of the people that we worked with, I worked with, the press corps. They really appreciated getting to learn about the Mormon faith. A lot of them didn't really know anything about it. Maybe they'd known a couple people growing up. But that was a really cool experience. And one thing that sticks out to me, every Sunday the governor tried, to make an effort to go to church, especially when we were back in Boston for the weekends. He would always go to church. Yeah. And just like the president has his traveling press pool that goes with him, like anytime the president leaves the White House and he goes to Andrews Air Force Base, he goes in Marine One, the helicopter. Well, there's helicopters that follow behind him with about a dozen press members. So we basically had the same thing. So they had to see every movement the governor made,
Sure.
which included going to church on Sunday mornings. So we would go meet the motorcade in front of his house, and then we would all motorcade over to the church together. Then our TV pool camera, the print folks, and the wire photographers, Reuters, Getty Images, AP, they would snap the photos of him going into church. And then they were actually allowed to come in and sit during sacrament meeting with us so long as they didn't bring their cameras with them.
Okay.
And I will say, a lot of them chose every single week to come into church. And that was sort of my responsibility. I'm like a token Mormon member of the staff that travels. So, of course, I had to kind of like drag the pool to church with me every Sunday. So that was really cool. And I mean, a couple of them had said to me that was one of their favorite parts of the campaign was being able to go to church every Sunday and just learn more about the faith. And it was sort of just a time for them for, reflection and meditation, just as it is for us. So I thought that was really neat. But
cool.
I mean, as far as like the moment, I definitely think that it was a great thing for the church. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. It took away a little bit of the mysteriousness that has been out there about us. When people saw, like, oh, well, he's just a nice, successful guy. He's got this great-looking family. I guess he's not so weird. He doesn't live in a cave somewhere or a bunker. Pretty normal guy from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Man.
It's funny. You made me think of something there. Was there ever, maybe you never had this discussion with any powers that be, but we talked about this a long time ago. What would it mean if he would have been elected as far as his ability to participate in typical worship as Mormons do? We know like Ronald Reagan, famously stopped going to church while he was president because he said it was too much of a security risk. And we've wondered about this in our own faith because Mitt Romney, Mormonism's different. We really believe in going every Sunday, trying to go to the temple. Was that ever a topic of discussion? Because I've wondered a lot how it would be to have the standing president go to his ward up there in Chevy Chase at the building every week, or what if President Romney wanted to attend the temple? Would his Secret Service men also have to be card-carrying, temple-worthy members? I don't know if this was ever anything that came up, but we can run it.
Would he have been a home teacher? That's what I want to know.
What calling would he have had? Yes.
I would be willing to bet my entire life savings that there were no discussions about that on the campaign because nobody cared about that. I certainly was never a part of any discussions about that. But I will say, I actually got asked that question by random people sometimes, a lot during the campaign. As you can imagine, everybody has the winning strategy, and they always want to be able to share it with Mitt. So a lot of times, people from my parents' ward or my parents' stake or my sister's ward in Colorado, they would know what I would do, and they would say, I really need to ask an important question, can I have your sister's phone number? Can I have your sister's email address? And my dad did that a couple times, and then he quickly learned that was not a good idea to give my phone number, and I was like, Dad, no, I don't even have time, to talk to you.
Didn't you just need more people's input?
Yeah, that's exactly what we needed, more people's input. But I did receive an email from, I think it might have even been a Facebook message from somebody, I don't even remember who it was, but they asked me that specific question was, how is he going to go to the temple? Would Secret Service have to go into the temple with him? And I didn't respond, but I obviously have absolutely
Well, you lost
no idea.
that vote, so I hope you still
yes, exactly. Because I didn't respond,
Yeah.
I'm sure. He didn't
They
vote
felt
for it.
jilted.
Be it known, Susan.
But I'll tell you what, I got a lot of interesting emails from people with, the strategy to win.
Were there any good ones? Did you find any that were hilarious?
Well, most of the time it's people saying you need to run a television ad nationwide that shows him doing this and saying X, Y, and Z. Well, that in theory would be a great idea if you could supply us with $20 million to run that TV ad nationwide, because that's how much it will cost. You can't just run a TV ad on any, topic that you want. It's fairly, expensive to do that. So that was one thing people always wanted was, all you need to do is run a TV ad that says this. Okay, well, give us the money to do it,
Yeah.
Did you guys not know that YouTube is free? You could have just put it on YouTube. I feel like
Just
I'm
all
helping
day
your
long.
camp. In the future, just so you know, you can put things on YouTube for nothing.
Yeah, but it's all about driving content. Like, you got to drive users there. Come on, you know this.
Everyone
People
watches
don't just
TV
go
on
to YouTube on their own.
I think everyone just sits there and waits for YouTube to show them things. That's how it works.
They say please
That's what
more.
I do.
But anyway, man, yeah, I don't know, a little interesting. I was kind of a little bit, or I was a little bit surprised that that Mitt said no to the third run. I feel like it's his moment finally. He just needed like a solid
finally.
8 years of preparation in order to come in there. And
This
knock it
time,
out.
America, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Are there any other? I mean, if not Mitt, then who would be our next contender for? And our meaning Mormon, obviously not from any political
Just
view.
who's the more.
But who's the next guy that has a decent stab at the White House? Do you think?
Are you asking a Mormon person that has a chance?
Yeah, and Mormon person.
Well, you know, there's a lot of Mormon members of Congress, actually. People would be surprised at how many there are.
Okay, but Mike Crapo's out after that DUI thing. We can't trust him. So what?
Okay.
Who's next?
You know who I think is actually going to be probably, and I'm not saying I think he's going to run for president, but I just think somebody who has a long career is Jeff Flake.
I would agree
Senator
with
from
that.
Arizona.
Yeah, Jeff Flake could go
Yeah.
places. Yeah.
He's pretty talented. Jason Chaffetz, really talented, very, very articulate,
That's
and
an
now he's
interesting
chair
word
of
to
the Government Oversight Committee in Congress, which is a pretty big responsibility. So I think he'll do a lot with that there. I don't know that Harry Reid will. I mean, he's just going to be in the Senate.
Hey, Harry Reid is still alive, and
I do think Jeff. I think of all the people I can think of, I think Jeff Flake would be the most obvious choice to take more national spotlight. I think he's got that. He's got that about him. He's just got the aura. I think he can pull it off.
There's a thing.
Well,
There's
I
a
think
thing.
Jeff Flake could have broader appeal. I mean, he's from Arizona. But now, I mean, he's won a statewide election in Arizona. It's one thing to win a seat when you're a Mormon and you live in Mesa, but it's another thing to win a statewide election and still have to appease, Coconino County and Tucson and everything. So, I think Flake's a pretty pragmatic guy. And I know people in his office. I like Flake. I like Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake doesn't make me upset. That should be his slogan. If Mitt,
I will not.
If Mitt would have
upset
run
you.
with, Romney 2012, he won't make you upset. We might be having a different conversation today, Chief of Staff.
Jeff, you should have emailed Susan.
If I would have known Susan, I
midway
would have emailed you, and
Yeah.
you would have passed this along, and they would have said, "Guys, we've had it wrong this whole time."
I do love Susan. In your career, I feel like every time I reach out to say hello, you're in the middle, like you're 9 days out from an election.
Exactly. Perfect timing.
Like, I'm like, all right, I'll call you in exactly 4 years, and we'll do this.
What about
Exactly.
Jim Matheson making a comeback? What about that, guys?
I don't really know what is he making a comeback for. I mean, I don't follow
Just-
Utah politics that much.
Well, Jim Matheson is one of those lone Mormon Democrats who's still hanging out.
But he doesn't have his seat anymore, does he?
No, he gave it up. He didn't run for re-election. Mia Love won the seat.
Okay. Maybe he'll try to run at governor.
What about Mia Love? Mia Love.
Yeah, she's a rising star for sure.
That could be interesting.
No doubt about it.
It's fun to have Mormons in Congress, and we're actually disproportionately represented with respect to
Oh.
our portion of the our percentage of the population. So
Definitely.
we punch above our weight, folks. Get in line. The takeover is coming.
Amen.
The takeover.
Amen.
No more. There's no more Bernie Sanders. That's over. No. Now it's time for Mormons.
All right. Anyway, we got a few Mormon stories we could jump into if we want. Or are there any other good, Susie? Do you have any other good like Mitt stories or
Like-
anything that have been floating around as we say goodbye to?
Did
to
you
his
catch
run
him
the
with
presidency?
a hookah pipe or drinking
Never
Coke?
did that. None in particular that I can think of. I mean, there's just so many awesome, amazing, cool stories out there. But unfortunately, I can't think of one off the top of my head that's
When
like
he was
really
stake
amazing.
I don't mean
president,
to
did
put
he
you on
have
the-
like 90 widows in his stake? Was that anything that?
Man, if he could have pulled a Monson card with some of that,
I don't know about
He could have
that.
convinced the fence sitters in Park City. They would have had a different idea. It would have been amazing. This is fascinating
anyway.
stuff.
All right. Well, so yeah, farewell, Mitt Romney. You get he gave it a good run for sake of his own fortune. I'm glad.
I
He's not
believe
running
he will be
anymore,
the
though.
next Supreme Court justice, though. So I don't think we're done with him. He's going to come back. when Scott
not-
Walker
someone-
takes over
someone
America.
Someone the other day said he'll be Secretary of Treasury, and I thought, hadn't heard that one before.
It could
so,
be.
okay.
That's it. That'd be.
He'd be a
2016.
great treasurist.
I used to think that if Governor Romney would have won the election, I don't think he would have done it by any means. But I always thought this duo of Mitt Romney as president and then John Huntsman as Secretary of State would have been a pretty rad combination. But I don't think we're ever going to get to experience that as a
Yeah, I don't think so.
which is sad. For him.
What? Dude, John Huntsman, those commercials still are some of my favorite things to go back to and say,
John
What?
Huntsman as a
What?
candidate
What are
was
you
just
doing?
like eating a box full of saltine crackers without any water.
wait, what?
Just by the end, you're just like, just chalk, just dry in your mouth. I actually liked a lot of John Huntsman, but as a candidate, he was.
Yeah, his campaign had a rough rollout. It didn't go very well for them.
Well, they leaned on Florida, and as you know, living in Tallahassee, we can't lean on Florida.
Florida's a true swing state.
Before we leave, though, as an adopted Floridian, how do you feel about Governor Bush obviously throwing his hat in the ring with 2016?
Hey, I think he'll be pretty formidable. I don't think he's the definite shoo-in, as a lot of people are sort of treating him as.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I definitely think I do think he is the front runner. But there's a lot of other great contenders out there, even people that we may not quite see yet as being front runner material. I think could end up that way. But I think Governor Bush, I mean, he did a great job here in Florida. Was a conservative governor. He's really big on education. He's going to have a really great team. I know a lot of the people who are working for him already. He's going to have an awesome campaign manager, a guy named David Kochel, who had been with Mitt since about 2005, 2006. Really good friend of mine, and Kochel's going to do a great job running that campaign. So it'll be exciting to see. I'm going to be watching from the sidelines, that's for sure. No more campaigns
You're
for
not
me.
jumping back in.
If it comes down
Never
between Bush or Chris Christie for the nomination, especially considering Chris Christie is very much Mitt Romney's guy, which one do you choose for the Republican nomination?
I don't know.
Having
I gotta
seen
see
no
how the
campaigning.
I cannot make a decision seeing no campaigning yet. That would be a very ill-informed decision.
So what I'm hoping for is an Al Franken, Janet Napolitano Democratic ticket, and then a Jeb Bush, Lindsey Graham ticket. I think that is what America needs, and it'll be a glorious year.
Interesting.
Jeff just lives. He lives for that.
I just want to
day.
see Al Franken win the nomination for president.
Well, don't hold your breath on that one, because I don't see
I
the
will.
Franken Napolitano, so
But it'd be so
I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Okay, fine. Way to burst my bubble. Oh,
All right. Well.
Yes, Al.
In other news, so we not a ton of Mormonia going on this week, but there's an update on the Rome Temple, which is less than exciting. So Rome has been riddled with dude. They've had the hardest time getting this thing going, and apparently now there's a very vague reference to contractor difficulties that they're having, where unrelated to the temple or religious stuff. They're just having, which I don't know. I don't know the nature of contractor work in Italy. I was hanging out with an Italian buddy of mine last night, and he was mentioning that if you're from there, sometimes you just take vacation. You just go. And
is this
maybe
is this a
that's
real
what's going on.
Italian, or you're talking? You've got somebody who's
No, this is Alessio. This is Alessio. This is a
You
real
know,
Italian.
let me just say, as a communications person, contractor difficulties definitely sounds, sort of like a talking point that they've got to stick to. So I don't know, and maybe it is contractor difficulties, but when I first
You read something
when
else
I
out of
first
that?
heard about that temple being built, I mean, I thought it was really awesome, but I also thought, boy, I'd be surprised if this, goes on the schedule that they have laid out for it, because, I mean, can you imagine them trying to come and, I mean, I don't think there's any land available near Temple Square, but let's say there was, and them coming in and trying to build, a giant cathedral, would we have sort of put the brakes or caused some contractor difficulties for them?
I suspect we did. Like the Madeline
Maybe.
probably.
We
didn't
did
go
have.
up
We
on
had one of our
schedule.
commenters on Facebook on this story said that he served his mission in Rome and just said meeting deadlines is not a strong suit of the Italian people.
I believe
maybe
it.
that is all it is.
So
Unless you're making an offer that we can't refuse, in which case a deadline is paramount.
But they're calling for special fasts and that sort of thing, which is par for the course. As things
Yeah, well, I
take
heard
their
actually it's already picked up, and the church is stressed. They have stressed that this is a contractor issue because we even had some Italian officials said they believed the temple was bad for ecumenism, for example, but which is great. It's like, hey, your temple's going to ruin everything out here. But they announced the temple back in 2008, so they've had a very slow go of it. They expected to dedicate it even last year, and now it's still just it's still probably a year out, I would say. I don't think we're going to see it for a while.
Still, Ukraine was 8.5 years from.
That's true, but remember with
to,
Ukraine,
dedication.
they announced it, but then nothing was going on. When they actually started building it, then it followed, I think, the pretty typical timeline as far as temples go. Rome has been under actual construction for just a very long time. It's just been kind of taken forever. Because sometimes they do announce temples, then we just sit on them for a little while before we do anything about it.
They just like to get the press and then
Yeah, pretty much.
float
So,
it and see what happens.
be prayerful of the Rome Temple, even if you might never see it in your life. There are plenty of members of the church out there in Mediterranean that would enjoy being able to use it more sooner than later and not have to go to Switzerland or Spain. Perish the thought. Terrible. I know.
Oh, the worst.
Another quick one here for you. Guys, Meet the Mormons. My choice for Best Documentary Feature at next year's Academy Awards, or last year's Academy. Why wasn't it nominated for an Oscar? I don't understand.
Dude, if we could have put the Mormon contingent petitioning for that.
Yeah, we all got out the vote
think
for
we could've
Mitt
got in
Romney.
there.
We couldn't get out the vote for Meet the Mormons? I mean,
If it think if it would have been a great film on top of that, it would have been amazing.
I got to admit, I actually haven't seen it. It did come surprisingly to a theater in Tallahassee. But wouldn't
it
you
came
know,
to a
it was
theater
like
near you
Al
and you
calling me
didn't go?
9 days before an election. It came like 2 weeks before, and I did not have time to be going to the movies.
Even when they organized a family home evening to go to
I
it,
did
you
not.
didn't go.
I was
well,
probably
when I stand
in my office.
when I
dare
stand
you.
before the judgment bar, I'm not going to say I was too busy with the political election. I'm going to say I knew my choice, and my decision was to go and spend money on a Saturday morning and watch a documentary that I could have watched for free months later. That was my choice.
And had the same experience. I'm still not convinced that this is. I think digital download is
Well,
like
we've
the
talked
right
about
place
this though.
for this.
That's where they wanted to put it, but nobody would carry it unless it had a theatrical release beforehand. That's the whole reason they did the theatrical release.
And wasn't it? It was in the top 10 films
Yeah,
for
and
that opening weekend.
then it
wasn't
tumbled by even like beyond Michael Bay proportions as far as weekend over weekend decline. It was spectacular. Double-digit decline is common, but in box office tracking, a good decline is in like high 30s or 40s. That would be considered good. But Meet the Mormons went down by like 70 or 80% every weekend after that.
That's because you can only. I mean,
It was
we can
very
only afford to go
front-loaded
see it once.
because remember, we were not. It was not a requirement to see it, but we were really encouraged to go see it by the apostles. But it wasn't a requirement.
Like it wasn't an official question in the temple interview, but it was the casual
Yeah,
conversation.
it's like, so did you
leading up
see any
to it,
good movies lately?
Where you'd sit down. Have you seen Meet the Mormons? Okay, now let's get to the real questions. And so is that gray line of did that affect the decision of whether?
So
or not
if
to
you
get into
if you
temple
do want to
recommend? I
see
don't
it,
know.
by the way, if you're chomping at the bit and haven't seen it, right now it's available now on iTunes and Amazon Instant. Okay, you can get it in either of those places. I think I should go look at my Prime membership and see if it's free on Amazon. If not, that's just sad. Also, it will be released on DVD and Blu-ray at the end of March. Netflix will get it later this year, and most of the major cable operators or television operators in the country are going to carry it on demand. And also, I guess it's not there yet, but you'll be able to get it on some of the other big services: Google Play, Vudu, some of the ones we've never heard of that we laughed about, Target Ticket. If any one of you listening has ever used Target Ticket for streaming, I would love to talk to you about just your general station in life and learn more about you. Just for market research purposes. And then also,
You know, this is one of those things where they were like, "All right, what services do you want this on? You can either choose
I can
3
sort of
or
relate
hit the
because
select all." And he's
Alec, I've
yeah.
got my old band. We how we have all our music up on iTunes and Spotify and stuff, right? And you do select when you digitally publish if there's any ones you don't want. And there's some of the most random music services around the even here in the States that I've never heard of in my life, but somehow they exist and somehow they're making some kind of money for people to have them. So presumably, Best Buy Cinema Now is the thing, making it happen, making it rain. Everybody, making it rain.
Good work, Meet the Mormons publicity.
Why did I
crew.
say thank you? I wasn't a part of this. You're welcome.
Way to keep pushing that out there. Well, let's see. I'll do. Oh yeah, so there's a startup out there called, or not a startup, a podcast called Startup, run by Alex Bloomberg from This American Life, which is very interesting. For me, from a startup perspective, I've enjoyed it.
Did they cover this on
randomly,
Startup?
Like
this
they
story?
release an episode.
Oh, Startup's great.
Yeah, well, so on there is a friend of mine, Trevor McKendrick. I know Trevor from the startup scene out in Salt Lake City, and he's got a great story. He made a Spanish Bible app, and put it out there, and is making like 6 figures a year off of this Spanish Bible app, which I think is kind of hilarious because he went on a mission, learned Spanish, came home, and was able to build an app to handle that, and did a great job at it. It turns out he's left the church, and the Startup podcast ended up being all about sort of his transition away from the church, which was kind of weird. Still a very respectful guy, very, very positive and good, but yeah, he is now an agnostic fellow, and I'm not sure how that wound up on this list. Or
well,
Jeff,
no,
what
he
did you
described
see that
himself
was
as an
interesting about
atheist,
this? Why
not
are we
an
talking
agnostic. There is a difference there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was more that. Well, part of it I thought was interesting, and just in the idea of, I don't know, if the guy has left Mormonism, if he's left Christianity, does he feel? And that's why they ask him, like, do you feel any sort of moral compromise here, in that you're profiting off of selling something that you? I mean, it's fine. He regards it as just fiction, so he says, "Hey, here's a fiction book, and people want to buy it. Good for them." I guess the only difference is I don't think there are many people buying. Well, maybe there are many people buying the. Maybe people are buying
They're not buying
Divergent
it as
and they
fiction,
think it's
no.
real. I don't know, but I assume more people are buying the Bible, buying it as an historical record that teaches important precepts. So it's more of that. I don't know. It made me think of members I knew on my mission who owned bars, whether they felt if they were torn in any way. Sort of the reverse of that, but it's not a major story by any means. But I thought it was pretty interesting to see an ex-Mormon who is now selling Bible apps to the tune of 6 figures.
He's a traveling Bible salesman to the modern extent. There's an element of that. Like in the Mormon world of if you own a grocery store, do you sell the lotto tickets? Do you sell cigarettes? Do you sell booze? I mean, that kind of stuff. Which my uncle actually ran a grocery store growing up, and he had to have those very conversations. And as we watched it sort of go down, we were like, "Uncle, you're selling cigarettes now?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, it makes money. I'm paying my bills." But I don't know. And remember, we talked a little while ago about there's an elder that sold drugs, and he never used them.
Oh yeah, well, not an elder like
a
a missionary, but yeah,
and he
like
paid
a
tithing on it?
Melchizedek priesthood holder, up in Ogden or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a drug dealer and paid tithing money on it.
Can't you not
class.
pay tithing on that though? I thought because
Yeah, I
church
think you're
frowns
not
on
supposed
illegally
to. I think if
obtained
they
funds.
knew,
Yeah, probably.
yeah, because you can't pay tithing on like lotto winnings or gambling,
And that's
winnings,
legal.
right?
But I guess if it's all under the table in the first place, he has a clear conscience about where his income comes from, and he just regards that as his increase and assumes no one will ask questions. I don't know. I mean, even if you won the lotto, if you didn't publicize it and the church didn't know about it, what would they do? How would they know? I mean, they might see crazy checks coming in, but if you broke it out, to very small quantities, dispersed over a number of years,
you're laundering
what
your
you
money.
do is you buy a car
tithing.
wash, and
What blessings are you trying to get that you're like, all right, well, I'm pretty hosed right now, but if I can squeak in an extra $1,000 into tithing this week,
I don't know.
coming back on
I got
top.
nothing.
it's an interesting story. It's always bizarre to me. Especially because this was how I had found out that he had
I'm sorry,
left the
Al. I'm
church.
sorry to have that
I was
dropped
like,
on you
what?
like that. That's
odd. Well, no, I mean, like it dropped on all of his friends and family. He was a little bit surprised at how the story was told because he was more focused on telling the story about making six figures a year selling an app, and the angle that was taken, which is often the angle that's taken, is look at this Mormon
some
fella.
quick ones. If you remember, of course, last week we talked a lot about the big press conference that the church had. We talked about that a ton, right? But then days later, the press conference on religious freedom and anti-discrimination and how there needs to be balance. By the way, one thing I liked about that, there was a Trib talk days later with Elders Christofferson and Oaks. And it was great to see them in a bit more of a candid environment. And I thought it sort of softened the blow because anyways, I encourage everyone to watch that. Maybe we'll embed it on the site with this post, especially when Elder Oaks said that we never apologize. That's kind of been going around the blogosphere a lot. He says we don't seek apologies and we basically never will apologize, which is kind of like, oh, that's great. But he explains that a bit more and qualifies those remarks. But basically what did he say? Apologize. And I can't think off the top of my head how he phrased it perfectly in the Trib talk, but I do recall that he explained it in a better way that made more sense. Because it's very easy to take a soundbite of we don't apologize and run with that and have everyone just say, that's great, Mormons. It's really nice of you not to apologize to the LGBT community or the black community before 1978. You know, it's great not to apologize. That's definitely something we don't want to do as Christians. So he explained it better. So watch it. Anyway, the point of this was days afterward, the Idaho state legislature voted on basically the same protections the church had said we favor, and they voted against it. Now, Idaho's not as overwhelmingly LDS as Utah, but that being the case, there were many Utah legislators who voted against it, even days after the church said, we want you to vote for it. So that happened. Good for Idaho.
Wait, what?
The same
what
basic
was the
thing.
legislation
Did you
of
miss the
Idaho?
whole show we had last week, Al?
Well, no, I heard the show, but like the legislation
it was
that
to
they
vote
were
on
against
non-discrimination legislation
religious
in
freedom?
Idaho. And Idaho was the first reasonably Mormon state to consider such a bill, and many of the legislators there, including Mormons, voted it down. And so the bill would have added sexual orientation and gender identity to the Idaho Human Rights Act, which provides those same sorts of protections that and that failed. They said
failed.
no. So I guess they didn't want to listen. That's unfortunate.
It's because they have re-election campaigns to win. That's why they voted it down.
It's probably true. Yeah,
It's sad.
What
It's
does Idaho
It's
want?
just sad when days after the church has said, hey, we want everyone to really talk about this and find a happy place to meet in the middle, and then even though it's Idaho and not Utah, they just say, yeah, no, that's nice. Thanks for the advice, but no.
They don't care about.
Also, did you happen to see the cool new survey the church put out about garments, Al?
I saw it. I was sure there was.
Alas,
a John
it is
DeWitt
not. It is
inspired
actually
thing
put
on
out
it.
by Intellectual Reserve, Inc.
Is this the one where they're just asking like, do you want?
Yeah, it's about
sexier
if it's sexy or not.
garments?
That's
Do you want? Do you want?
they talk about
better
that. Yeah, they
fitting,
talk about the
different
fit and the
fabrics?
quality of the garments, and it's not the most comprehensive survey ever, but it covers a lot of bases just based on how they fit, where they don't fit, what materials you like, don't like. As a man, I can say the worst thing ever is they need to recover the elastic waistband. I don't know if they were trying to cut costs on fabric, but if you buy new garments
Wait,
as
what?
a man, the elastic waist, some previous models were always like this.
Yeah.
But the elastic waistband has historically been covered with the same fabric, just sort of stitched over. So you have fabric lining around your waistband. It's more comfortable. They got rid of that on all of them, and now it's just a pure elastic band hugging your skin. It's irritating for many, myself. included.
What? This is
Yeah,
why I
mine are
still
pretty-
use the
I've been-
garments
I've-
for my mission. 12 years later.
I wanted to buy new ones.
12 years later, I've got it stitched together. Luckily, I work at a quilt shop where I can patch this stuff down.
Put it on the loom.
So
The
how
sweet-
did
the
they
sweet
conduct
old
this
ladies, they
survey?
don't know what they're
Like
working.
Survey Monkey? Or
No, the church has its own internal stuff. If
I'm sure
It
it's
is-
Oh,
Qualtrics,
yes.
It is quality.
Mormon-owned
Qualtrics.
survey
You're exactly right.
company.
Oh, they're no longer taking respondents
Oh,
now. They've
it's
met their
so-
quotas, they say. Though oddly, there's a box you can fill in after it says thank you, and then hit a next button. I'm going to see what it does. It says my response is being recorded. It just recorded a response of me saying ASDF over and over again. So that's it.
I'm sure
Anyway,
you're not
This
the
is
first
cool. I'm
one
actually glad
offer
to see
that
them just
response.
doing little things like this. You know, recognizing that garments are sacred, they serve a special purpose, but we are also able to be versatile. Yeah, well,
But let's ask the
yeah, not
members
what they like as
like.
far as their meaning, but what they like as far as them being comfortable and useful to wear. I think that's fine. I'm glad they do that. So, the funny thing is, apparently you
Sure.
can find your batch numbers for when your garments were made if you look at the tags on the back. But those labels wear off after like
can go
one
and
time
shake
through
the
wash,
person's
so I don't
hand
know
that's-
who is going to have.
Why do
there
we
was
care
some
about the batch
rationale
numbers?
behind why it mattered? I just closed it.
There was a reason.
I think it's you can put the
Somewhere.
year and location of manufacture just so they can, like, if you have a problem with yours, that way they can look at quality control or something like that.
What I would say is they're $3.
Hey, $3 is a lot of money
Suck
when you
it
live
up
in
and go buy a
Guatemala,
new pair
okay?
if you got a problem. $3. No, in Guatemala you get the like.
Well,
the
then we
price
should all go to
advantage. They
Guatemala
give
to
you
buy
a
'em.
discount. I bought some when I was in Ukraine. I
You
feigned
think
being
they'd
a
frown
local
on me
member
selling them on
so that I
eBay
could get some
at a
cheap
nice
underwear.
markup? Probably. Yeah, I think they'd have a problem with that.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
better to ask
Thank you very
forgiveness than permission, Jeff. Go for it. As your high
Sure,
counsel.
You're not my high councilman.
Let's see. So did the high chancellorship. Did you see the ABC news
was
story
delightful,
on
yeah.
sister missionaries? They say that that's the new face of Mormonism. Is now we're smiling young women. No longer are we known for being the boys in white shirts on bikes, but instead we are.
Hey, can I
smiling,
ask a
happy
question
women.
about that segment? Because I watched it, and there was one thing that I didn't go on a mission, so I didn't know this until I watched it. But I was really curious how I can't remember who conducted the interview, Juju Chang maybe, but she asked the sister missionaries even about wearing colored bras.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I
she
mean,
did.
how did she even know that? Like, did somebody tip her off to that, or is that, like, did she read the handbook maybe before the interview?
What?
No, they could,
Wait, are you not
they can
allowed
only
to
wear
get flashy,
white or
no leopard print
skin-colored
bras on your mission?
I did not know that.
Well, I get the reasoning behind it.
shame.
The point, you just don't want anyone to see your bra through your blouse. which
Right, you don't want it to be a distraction. But I thought that was interesting. That was one of the things that the interviewer brought
that she
up.
knew about. I know they and it was a quick little, it was just a quick little aside. I think the sister missionaries handled it pretty well too, because she tried to push them if it was some sort of, like if it was a rule, if it was about their salvation. They're like, nope, it's just a matter of just not, looking slutty, just trying to keep it classy
trying-
and not be a distraction.
trying to keep
That's
it
all we're
on
trying
point,
to do.
you know?
It's the same reason why all those young men have to shave every day and wear white shirts. It's just so that they look simple and can't offend anybody. That's all it is.
I wonder how much value the church gets out of that as a symbol of the like guys in white shirts on bikes, sort of symbol of missionary, of like the Mormon faith. Because I was talking to a bishop the other day about sort of his hope that the ways that missions are done now would go away completely as we continue to evolve. Like the idea that you're just going to randomly walk, or that like, I mean, back in the day when the white shirts and ties were a thing, so we're wearing suits.
Yeah, sure.
For most people every day, right? You'd have nice slacks and a white shirt and stuff, and they weren't necessarily sticking out like a sore thumb back then. They were like more sort of fitting in and trying to look professional. And now you got all these guys in white shirts and ties with a backpack on. There's very little
They look like
professional
college
about
students
that per se.
in a uniform. Yeah.
They look like college students that are dressing up for an interview.
Yeah,
job
but
fair.
I think at this point it's just part of our brand. That's
Like,
Mormon Brand right there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I wonder how valuable that image is, or do you go?
Let's ask our communications expert, Susan. Thoughts?
I don't know.
I agree. It definitely is part of the brand. But I love the sisters thing because it is true. Like, Are you more likely to open the door to two, tall, sometimes gangly, awkward, 19-year-old
Who
boys?
don't know how to talk to
Or,
anyone.
or two, like,
That was me.
really
I'm
cute,
sorry.
smiling
They used to
girls,
make me hide.
with long hair and cute dresses.
Cute.
But I don't know if you could put some sort of a numerical value on that brand. I don't know.
Something you're
Anyways,
stewing on. It is so
something-
funny. I
something I'm
love Sister
stewing on.
Missionaries. Even when they're 19, they're still just like, it's like they're just leap years beyond. That's why I said leap years, not light years. Leap years beyond the elders in maturity. So many elders are wonderful kids, but they can just be hard to have a conversation with because they just don't.
Oh my gosh! Well, especially more and more, you get these missionaries out there that are expert in playing Minecraft, and have like literally as a young man, you can make it through your entire teenage years without having to say more than 4 words a day.
It's true.
And you get out into a mission field, and it's like all of a sudden you want to carry on an articulate conversation and build on common grounds and have interpersonal relationships with people that like communication matters, and there's no way.
I know, but they get. Yeah, I was hanging out with him at a baptism on Saturday, and I'm always reminded. I said, like, how old are you? And he's like, I turned 19 in 6 months. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you are babies, and they love going to Dairy Queen. That's what I learned. That's what a mission is. I said, where do you go to eat? They're like, we love going to DQ. I'm like, why? You're in Washington, D.C. Go
Peanut Buster
somewhere.
bars.
Oh, my goodness. Good kids, though. Good kids. And I
Peanut
wish we could
Buster
have
buffets.
actually a whole discussion on the show this week, but we're out of time pretty much. All on the great apostasy. And if any of you are apostasy buffs, I would love to hear from you. So send me an email,
I got people.
at thisweekinmormons.com. I would love to hear from you. We've taught some discussions with a very devout Catholic, very interesting guy who's very receptive to stuff. And I just love it because he's the kind of one who he's asking questions that I don't have answers to. The missionaries are totally lost. Like they know nothing about the apostasy because we don't teach it as much as a narrative anymore like we used to. And so it's been educational. So point is we could have a whole show on that, but save that for another time.
All right. Jeff, we can catch up after the break.
And last bit of news, everyone. There was a brief rumor that went around this week that President Monson had died. Don't know where it came from. I didn't even see it going around, but it was enough that they got Scott Walker over there in the church's office to actually respond and say, President Monson's alive and well. So I don't know where this came from, but he's around, folks. It's okay.
Those are always hard because all of a sudden you'll see something start picking up steam, and you want to share and share some thoughts and feelings and be the first one in your newsfeed to do it, but go to the newsroom first.
That reminds me, I need to write some obits so we're ready when these things happen.
Just to keep it on file. You never know.
That's what they do. Then you accidentally publish it. Like, who was that for last year? Some news outlet accidentally published someone's obituary. It was funny because it was like, I forgot who it was for. It was something ridiculous like Kevin Costner or something. I don't know.
What
Macaulay Culkin. They thought Macaulay Culkin died.
Don't they think he's dead at least like 3 times a year though?
It was Macaulay Culkin, I remember.
Have you seen
the
his
90s called?
Have you seen his pizza band?
I have not.
He's in a pizza band called the Pizza Underground. All they do is they play covers of Velvet Underground songs, but swapping out all the text in Velvet Underground for pizza-themed lyrics. It's They claim it's an art project. It is a fine example of postmodernism failing all of us. It's terrible. It is.
Fair.
But I encourage you to all look it up on YouTube and just be mad at Macaulay Culkin.
Well, anyway.
All
right. So thanks for being with us this week, Susie. I'm cutting off Jeff's Macaulay Culkin pizza themed Velvet Underground.
I was done with it. Don't worry.
If people want to follow you, where can they find you on the interwebs?
They can follow me on Twitter at Shepworth. SHEPWORTH.
It's a Susan Hepworth.
I tweet about political stuff and KU basketball. That's pretty much it.
I am looking at it
Those
right
are
now.
the only things that matter.
Oh, that is an action shot of you in a car. That is you look like a DC insider right there. That's hardcore. Very impressive.
Oh, such a DC insider. Down
Very,
in
very
Tallahassee.
impressive.
All right, well, great. Thanks for joining us. It was great to
Thanks for
reminisce about
having
the good
me.
old days.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for spending time with us, Susan. Appreciate it.
And if you'd like to email us or get in contact with us, people, contact at This Week in Mormons or thisweekinmormons.com, where you can always find us. And leave us notes on the story. Troll us. We're happy to take the bait, always.
Sure. And visit us on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram and Google+, YouTube, blah, 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 blah. And, of course, we encourage you to look out for Sunday School Bonanza, our Gospel Doctrine podcast. If you've never listened to that before, it's very informative and shorter than this, as well as Third Hour of Power, where we give the same treatment to the Priesthood and Relief Society lessons. All great stuff. We keep very busy here, all for all of you. So there we go.
All right.
It's over.
Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you later.
All right. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Al. Everyone.
Thank you.
Bless
Bye.
you all. Another episode of this.